Let's talk about 5 more Riftbound rules you should know. We're gonna start with a really easy one. Keep it simple at the beginning. If you have a ready unit with ganking at a battlefield and a ready unit in your base, you can move both units to the other battlefield at the same time. Ganking and moving from base is treated as if you were moving 2 units from base, for example. The next rule that I have for you is something that I believe is called a delayed trigger. Comment below if we're wrong about this. I'm not sure of the official term for it, but the ruling is still the same no matter what. This is when something like Targon's Peak, which reads, when you conquer here, ready 2 runes at the end of your turn. When you conquer it, there is no effect that immediately happens from the card because the effect isn't happening until the end of turn. So when you conquer it, you are creating a delayed trigger, an effect that isn't going to be happening immediately, but will trigger at the end of turn. The reason we're talking about this is because when you move to your end of turn, that trigger is on the chain and can be responded to. So let's say that you passed your turn with full runes up, or I should say try to move to the end of your turn with full runes up. With the Targon's Peak ability on the chain, you could do something like a 2-cost reaction. Let's say Discipline, for example, if you just wanted to filter through some card draw. So you tap 2 with that ability still on the chain, you activate Discipline, it resolves, you draw your card, and then Targon's Peak ability resolves, and you'll untap those 2 that you just tapped for Discipline. This is just something that could come up in some of your games, and it's important to understand what this means. Before we get to our third ruling, there's a couple of very basic rules that I want to discuss so that this third ruling makes sense. If you are at 7 points, and 8 points is required to win the game, which is how it normally is unless there's Aspirant's Climb out, when you go to conquer and you haven't scored in any other way, you actually won't win the game and earn a point. You will draw instead. You only win the game through holding and going from 7 to 8, or double conquering and going from 6 to 7 and then 7 to 8 on the second conquer, or from miscellaneous card effects like Tryndamere and such, which we're not going to dive into. The point is, if you only do a single conquer while you're at 1 point away from victory, instead of winning the game, you will draw a card. The next basic thing I want to talk about is conquer effects. Let's say that you have a Monastery out and you have a Kiana with a buff counter. If you move Kiana up and successfully conquer, both Kiana's trigger to either draw or channel 1 rune exhausted and Monastery's effect will both go on the chain. You can determine which way you want to order these. So you could choose, for example, to put Kiana on the chain first and Monastery on the chain second, and then the chain would resolve backwards. So Monastery would resolve, you'll remove the buff counter from Kiana and draw a card. Then after you've drawn that card, you can choose whether or not you want the draw from Kiana or to channel a rune exhausted. You don't have to make both decisions before you start resolving. Kiana will let you choose. Or for example, Kaisa and Zon Warrens. If you have a Zon Warrens, you conquer it with the Kaisa, you could choose to put the Zon on the chain first, Kaisa on the chain second. That way you'll draw with Kaisa and then discard and draw with Zon, giving you more options. Layering conquer effects or other abilities that go on the chain at the same time is very beneficial to min-maxing and making the best plays you can in TCGs. This leads us finally to our third ruling. If you are at the point where you would draw a card from a conquer, 7 to 8 points with no Aspirant's Climb out, and you have a battlefield like Candlelit Sanctum, for example, you would go up. If you conquer it, you would draw, and then you have to do Candlelit Sanctum afterwards. Because scoring from a conquer happens before when I conquer effects or when you conquer effects, you can't choose to look at the top 2 with Candlelit and then draw from not getting a point and getting a card instead. You would have to draw and then do when I conquer effects. Just something that's important to know that you can't layer in that way so that you don't mess up a game state. All right, maybe you knew these previous 3 rulings. I can almost guarantee that you don't know these next rulings. Let's talk about our final 2 more complicated, more niche rulings. Baited Hook targets on activation. The reason that this is important is because you can reaction speed a card to interact with it. So let's paint a picture. Your opponent has Baited Hook and 2 units on board. They go to activate the Baited Hook effect. To do so, they have to pay the cost of 1 energy and 1 power. also, as cost, they target a unit. I want to clarify that cost is not to kill a friendly unit, just to target one of their units. So even though they have multiple units out, you know which one they are targeting with baited hook. Let's say that the unit your opponent targeted with baited hook was a Vanguard Captain, which has 3 might. Well, baited hook would allow them to normally sacrifice it and look for a unit with 1+ might or less. So they could get something like a Spectral Matron, which is a very good unit. It would immediately bring back this Vanguard Captain. It generates them a lot of value. This is how baited hook wins, right? But if you reaction speed with a card like Smokescreen, for example, you would then bring the Vanguard Captain's might from 3 down to 1 with Smokescreen, and then baited hook will check the might upon resolution. So it kills the Vanguard Captain because it already targeted that on activation, but now instead of being able to get mights of 4 or less, like Spectral Maiden, it would only have 1 might. So it would be getting mights of 2 or less, which is now gonna hit something like a Soaring Scout or something, and really slow them down a lot. This can be a really important interaction piece, especially with Kaisa running cards like Smokescreen and Stupefy, so this interaction is actually one that can happen pretty frequently and is really important for both players to know is available to do. Let's talk about our 5th rule, which is one that I don't think a lot of people know and is actually really important. So strap in, we're going to talk about this for a little bit. Cleanup, which happens at the end of a showdown, heals all damage everywhere. So let's paint you a picture again. We're going to say that we have a Kaisa Survivor in base and a Darius on a battlefield. Let's say that the Kaisa Survivor has taken 3 damage from a Falling Star or something like that and is sitting in base with that damage. The Darius has taken no damage. If your opponent activates a Void Seeker and hits that Darius for 4, it's a 5 might unit. It won't die, but it will take 4 damage. No showdown has happened, so no cleanup to heal units have happened. The Kaisa still has 3 damage and the Darius still has 4 damage. Each unit basically being at 1 damage left. Let's say that your opponent moves up a Watchful Sentry, which is a 1 might unit, to the battlefield with Darius. Now, if both players passed focus and we just went into the showdown and combat and all that stuff, each unit would kill the other, 5 damage being dealt to the Watchful Sentry, 1 damage being dealt to the Darius. The units would die, no conquer, whatever. But let's say that you play Ride the Winds. This would move and ready Darius to the other battlefield. Let's say that there's a Lecturing Yordle there with 2 might. Well, the first showdown has to still resolve first. So what would happen, again, if no players did any more actions, is the Watchful Sentry would conquer and give that player a point for that, trigger any conquer abilities, whatever, but then we move to cleanup. Cleanup will heal all units everywhere. So the Kaisa in base and the Darius that was at that battlefield but is now at the other battlefield will still heal. This is very important for that Darius, especially now that that original showdown is done. We have another showdown from the Ride the Winds putting Darius into an enemy-controlled battlefield. This will start a showdown and combat, since there is an enemy unit there. But because Darius is healed, that Lecturing Yordle will only deal 2 damage to Darius, being a 5 might unit won't be enough, and if both players passed focus, the Darius would kill the Lecturing Yordle, it would survive, you would actually score a point on your opponent's turn, which is super cool, and that Darius will go to cleanup after all that and heal itself again. Now, you know, your Kaisa can't be hit by Falling Star, I should say, can't be killed by 1 reflexive trigger of the Falling Star because it had healed as well, even though it was in base. So these are really important situations to be aware of and really can impact how a game is played. Thank you all for watching this rulings video. We triple check, quadruple check all of our rulings to make sure that we are giving you guys high quality and correct content. We also do plenty of other Riftbound content as well as Grand Archive content if you want to check out that TCG with rulings videos for Riftbound, tips and tricks, deck profiles, gameplay, all high quality, all weekly content being published. Please make sure to go sub and check out our other content. Also, if you want to support our channel, like our $100 patrons, you can go find the link to our Patreon down below. Thank you so much, Dave and June, our CU, our supporter. You guys are the people that make it all happen. All of our patrons are the people that make it all happen. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.